Welcome to the Warfare Parenting Podcast. I'm Lawson, here to walk with you through the ups and downs of parenting prodigals. In every episode, we're going to get real about the struggles, sharing stories of hope, and learning how faith can turn things around. So let's dive in and discover the path to healing and hope together. Welcome to the Warfare Parenting Podcast. I'm Lawson, your host, and this has been such an amazing series. We've been with Nancy Landrum. Hello, Nancy.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm very happy to be with you. Thank you, Lane. I'm so proud of the work you are doing with this podcast.
Well, this has just been an amazing series. Nancy has shared her story in the episode 1 about how she had a tragic marriage end due to death of her husband suddenly. And then her second marriage, her husband passed away with cancer very quickly. And she had a son, Stephen, who taught her a lot of lessons. And that is what brought her to write the book, Pungent Boundaries. And Nancy, you have taught us so much already. And today we are going to delve into the invisible barrier codependency creates. And we're going to describe the characteristics and the results of codependence in a relationship and how to deconstruct the barriers created by codependency. So I'm excited about this because I and you, we both said we were at points in our lives very codependent with our children as they were making very poor choices. And you went through the Velcro real quickly. Explain the Velcro illustration in codependency.
In order for codependency to happen, there has to be two people that have beliefs that interlock with each other. And one belief is, I'm only loving you if I take care of you and clean up your messes and assume your responsibilities that you are dropping. The other person's belief is, I don't have to be responsible because mom will pick up the junk for me. You know, she'll take care of the consequences. And when they get locked together, it's unhealthy for both persons and definitely creates a lot of negative feelings.
Yes, and I put it here. I say Nancy describes and shares the codependent patterns on how two people are tucked together like the hooks and loops of Velcro while they are joined in this crazy making dance. They are also separated by a barrier erected from the blocks of unhappy feelings created by codependency. So some of the blocks you talk about, Nancy, are resentment, blame, guilt, crippling pity, and shame. Let's talk about how codependency does build these barriers.
The barriers occur, those negative feelings build up because one or both persons are not being authentic about their needs or their feelings. When I was acting in a codependent way, I ended up trying to control Stephen, my son, control his behavior so that his behavior would make me look good and that would make me feel better because I was embarrassed by his acting out. I felt ashamed. You know, it was so public. It was like he blew my cover. I couldn't pretend to be a perfect mom anymore. And that was extremely painful. But the feelings that brought up in me, I tended to blame him because it was his behavior that blew my cover, that made me take the mask off. In reality, I was not assuming a responsibility for my own feelings and my own needs. When he was 18, I finally made the decision, supported by my husband, Jim, to tell Stephen that he couldn't live at home anymore. I was no longer legally responsible for him. And I was so tired of the chaos his addiction brought into our family. I never knew what would happen next. He was stealing from us. He punched a hole in the wall that had to be fixed. I would think he was home in bed asleep, and cops would wake me up to come and get him out of jail. And I decided that I deserved to live in a peaceful home, and our family needed a peaceful home. And as long as he continued his behavior, that was his choice, then he would have to live with the consequence of not having a home with us anymore. It was probably the most difficult, the most painful decision I've ever made in my life.
It is. It is so hard to finally just say, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
And you're right. Fear holds us a lot of times in this codependent relationship because just like you probably had a lot of sleepless nights wondering, where is he laying his head tonight? Is he even alive? Is he in
Yeah.
this world or high? There are so many factors.
When I told him he couldn't live at home anymore, I also told him that during daylight hours, he could come in and eat whatever food he found in the refrigerator, so I know he wasn't going hungry, but he couldn't come in to just crash after being high on drugs. So he was welcome to come in during daylight hours, but as soon as the sun went down, he had to go. It was so painful, and it was so painful for him. He was heartbroken, and yet it was his choices that led to that choice for me to say, I can't live with your chaos in our home anymore.
Well, and I love the way you put it. You can't have these negative feelings and have healthy relationships.
No, those negative feelings, the resentment, the self-righteousness, the blame, the criticism, the handing, assuming that if Stephen's life got cleaned up, then I would feel better. Then it would prove that I'm not such a bad mom after all. Putting that responsibility for my self-image on my child was such an unhealthy burden for him to carry.
Yes, yes. I want to be sure we touch on how do boundaries and responsibilities, they're blurred. Can you go a little further into that?
It was quite a process to sort out in my mind, what am I responsible for and what is Stephen responsible for, or another person. It doesn't have to be a child. It can be a sister or a parent or a friend. But for sake of simplicity, we'll talk about Stephen. It was my responsibility legally to do my best to care for him until the age of 18. And after that, it was his responsibility to care for himself. In the process of his growing up, I had made so many mistakes, times where I did clean up his messes or bail him out of jail or feel sorry for him out of pity because I knew he was really in a lot of pain, emotional pain, but I couldn't fix his life for him. In fact, when he was about 22, we were in the car riding someplace, and I remember saying to him, Steve, I've come to a decision that you need to know about. I'm going to stop nagging you to get into a recovery program. If you ever decide that you want to be free from your addiction, and if you ask me for help, I'll move heaven and earth to find a great recovery program for you. But until you do, I want you to know that your life is yours. You're an adult. You make choices for yourself. And how you live your life is up to you. I'm not going to bug you about how you're living your life anymore. If you choose to live it as an addict, that's up to you. And I want you to know that I'm going to be okay. So whatever choices you make are not going to ruin my life because I'm making good, healthier choices for myself. He told me later that it was like a 500-pound weight was lifted off of his shoulders. When you disconnect this Velcro relationship, I told you in previous podcasts that it frees you and it frees the other person. When Stephen heard that I had decided I'm going to be okay no matter what you do, it lifted the burden of responsibility for me off of his shoulders.
Wow. And you don't really see that until you walk it through, you know, how it
Yeah,
really does. As you said in one of the other podcasts, when you make a healthy decision for yourself, it immediately is a more healthy decision for the people you love.
absolutely. I think that's a spiritual law.
I do too. I do too. So, in your book, Pungent Boundaries, you have a checklist in chapter 5 that really shows us the symptoms to help us identify barriers to dependency. Can you give us a few of those to ask ourselves? That checklist, I loved it.
Well, it was it was kind of a revelation to me to realize that yes, Steve was addicted to drugs. I was addicted to control and wanting his approval and wanting the approval of others. I mean, I would do anything to keep that approval and to somehow control his life for him so that I looked good. I resisted the feelings I felt as a result of codependency. I didn't like realizing that I'm responsible for my feelings. If I feel resentful and feel angry, it's up to me to deal with that feeling. It's not up to someone else to fix my feelings. At the same time, it's not up to me to fix someone else's hurtful feelings. I remember one day Jim was in the bathroom shaving, and he kind of woke up on the wrong side of the bed and was grumpy and nicked himself shaving. And as I walked by the bathroom door, I just said, "Really sorry you're having a bad morning." And I just went on and didn't try to stop and fix him. Like, can I fix you your favorite breakfast? Or what can I do to make you feel better? He's a grown man. He can deal with his own feelings. And this was, during the time when the codependency lessons were becoming clearer and clearer. He told me later how liberating it was for him that I just expressed sympathy and moved on. It was up to him to take care of his unhappy feelings. Rescuing others from consequences was one of the symptoms that creates a barrier. Rescuing is never a real rescue. It's an interference with the consequences of a choice.
Wow. Say that again. Rescue is the interference of the consequence, right?
It is not rescue. It's not a real rescue. It's not like somebody's drowning and you get in the water and pull them out of drowning. That's a real rescue. But when we step in and interfere with the experience of the consequences of a person's choice, that isn't rescuing. That's interference in their life lesson, their life journey.
Yes, it is. Wow. So I guess our listeners and viewers today can say to themselves, what are these emotions I'm feeling? Am I feeling shame? Am I rescuing someone in my life too much and they aren't feeling the consequences of their choices? These are the questions we need to start asking ourselves to clearly define our codependency and the barriers that are constructed during this.
The barriers are these unhappy feelings that prevent a genuine relationship from taking place, a real relationship that's based on reality and truth and vulnerability and clear boundaries. So in order to clear out the boundaries, you have to look at, or I had to look at, why am I feeling resentment? And is it my responsibility to take care of this issue with Stephen, or is it his responsibility? Is it my responsibility to fix Jim's feelings when he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed? Or is it his job to deal with that? And if it's not my job, then to disconnect from whatever behavior or belief keeps me hooked in to a system that isn't working for either of us. I have to be prepared to see another hurt, someone I love hurting, because hurting is part of how we learn lessons.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I wish that weren't true, but we human beings seem to need a lot of pain in order to learn valuable lessons.
So today, if we find ourselves with all these barriers, the best way to deconstruct these barriers is to say, I'm no longer going to carry these emotions for this person. Is that right?
That is one of the steps. I'm not going to try to fix somebody else's hurting feelings when the hurt is due to their own choice. And I'm willing to assume responsibility for my own feelings. So if I'm feeling angry or resentful, let's, sit down and journal a little bit. Why am I feeling resentment? What exactly is causing the resentment? Am I feeling taken advantage of? And what could I do? What's one step I could do today to hand that responsibility back to the appropriate person rather than taking on that burden for myself?
Wow. That is so powerful. And you write in your book, I love this. You say codependency erects a barrier, making it impossible to experience a healthy balance of responsibility, respect, and when appropriate love. This is the reason we must deconstruct these barriers, because if we don't, we will never ever experience this healthy balance, right?
That's my belief, and it was certainly my experience. And we can go on being codependent as long as we are agree to feel resentment. you know, as long as we're willing to suffer the consequences of being codependent, you can keep on being codependent. It's your choice. But if you want to free yourself and at the same time create a healthier environment for someone else to learn their lessons, then you take steps to set an appropriate boundary with an appropriate consequence and be prepared to follow through. I can't say strongly enough, a threat is a boundary without consequence. Threats don't work. How many of us told our kids, you can't eat, you won't get dessert unless you eat your vegetables, and then we go back and give them dessert anyway? Well, they've just learned that we don't mean what we say. It was so shocking to Stephen the first time I set a clear boundary with him. It was shocking to him because he wasn't used to me following through.
Right. And, it is, we're here to say it is hard. I was there, but now we both have walked through it and on the other side, and we know it is best for us and for those that we love to walk
Absolutely.
through this.
Absolutely.
Well, Nancy, again, I can't believe it. We're at another ending point for this episode. How do we find your book, Pungent Boundaries?
Thank you so much for asking. You can either go to my website, nancylandrum.com, under the resources page and order it from there, or you can go to Amazon and order either the paperback or the audio version.
Wow. Nancy, is there anything you'd like to say? I love that you gave us a step today about how to just, if you just sit down and journal why you feel that way, and then
Yes.
figure out how to let it go, right?
One step, take one step that will hand the responsibility back to whomever you're codependent with and be prepared to follow through.
Wow. Thank you again, Nancy. This has been incredible. We've got one more episode. You don't want to miss it. And thank you for your time today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's a privilege to be here and to share these valuable lessons.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me on the Warfare Parenting Podcast. I hope you're leaving with a heart full of hope and some spiritual strategies to help your wayward child and bring your prodigal home. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and with God, everything can change. I invite you to the many free resources at lanelawsoncraft.com. Don't forget to read the free chapter, the first chapter of my newest book, The Parent's Battle Plan, and sign up for weekly encouraging emails too. Stay in touch on social media and don't forget to subscribe. I'm Lane Lawson Craft, reminding you with love and faith, no thing is too hard or big for our God. See you next time.